Hello friends, my name is Rudo. I invite you into the mesmerizing world of African stories, where the rich tapestry of Africa comes alive through timeless folk tales. Subscribe to our channel. There are exciting stories ahead, and here we go.
They say the dead do not return. That once a body is buried, it stays in the ground, and the soul moves on. But I know the truth, because I saw Prince Jengo die. And the next night, I saw him walking through the village. At first, no one believed me. They said my mind was playing tricks. That grief and fear had made me see things that weren't there. But then, they heard it too. Slow, heavy footsteps. And a quiet, almost polite knock on their doors. By the time they believed me, it was already too late. No one believed me. No one wanted to. But I know what I saw. Prince Jengo was not just cruel, he was a monster in human skin. He ruled our village with no mercy. If a man owed him money, he took the man's wife. If a child cried too loudly near the palace, he had the mother whipped. He fed his hounds fresh meat while our people starved. He took whatever he wanted. He laughed when people begged for mercy. The villagers feared him, but we had no power to stop him. He was the king's only son. The royal guards obeyed his every command. If you spoke against him, you disappeared. That was the way things were. Until she came. She arrived one afternoon, just before the sun dipped below the trees. She was ancient, her skin dry like cracked earth. Her eyes were too sharp, too bright. Though she carried a walking stick, she did not lean on it. She walked tall, proud, like she belonged here. She entered the marketplace, where women were selling their last sacks of grain and children chased each other through the dust. The people stopped and stared as she made her way through. No one knew her. She was not from our village. Prince Jengo was in the market that day, watching a young man being beaten by his guards for stealing a piece of bread. The old woman did not hesitate. She stepped forward and pointed her bony finger at him. "You have taken too much from the people," she said. "Your time is over." The crowd held its breath. No one spoke to the prince that way. No one dared. Prince Jengo sneered. "Who are you, old woman?" His voice was full of amusement. "Do you not know who I am?" The woman did not lower her hand. "I know exactly who you are, Jengo, son of the king. And I tell you this, you will die at night, and you will rise at night. But you will not belong to the living." For a moment, no one moved. Then, the prince threw his head back and laughed. The guards laughed too. The villagers lowered their heads, pretending not to hear. No one wanted to be punished for witnessing this. Prince Jengo waved his hand. "Take her away." The guards grabbed the old woman's arms, but she did not struggle. As they dragged her toward the forest, she only smiled. That was the last time we saw her. That night, the prince fell ill. By sunrise, he was dead. The village gathered before the palace at dawn. No one had expected it, not like this. The prince lay on a white cloth, his skin dark and swollen, as if something inside him had burned. His eyes were open, but there was no life in them. His mouth was twisted in a silent scream. Even the bravest men looked away. No one knew what kind of sickness could do this to a man so quickly. The king's face was torn. He did not cry. He did not speak of revenge. He only gave one command: bury him before sunset. The burial was swift. The royal guards wrapped the prince in white cloth, and the village men dug his grave. By the time the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the trees, he was in the ground. That night, I stood at the palace gates. The sky was black, the moon hidden behind thick clouds. The torches flickered. The air felt wrong, heavy, as if the village itself was holding its breath. Then I heard it. A slow, heavy sound. Footsteps. I turned toward the palace courtyard. Prince Jengo stood there. His burial cloth hung loose, torn and covered in dirt. His bare feet left dark prints on the ground. His mouth hung open like he was trying to speak, but no sound came out. My body froze. My heart slammed against my ribs. Then his head turned toward me. I swear to you, I heard his neck crack as he moved. His eyes were not human anymore. They were black, empty holes. I gasped, and my body finally obeyed. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet. I must have made a sound because the other guards came running. "What is it?" one of them asked. I pointed. "Him." We turned back toward the courtyard. Prince Jengo was gone. But the footprints remained. They led from the palace steps, across the dirt path, back toward his grave. The king refused to believe us. "It is a trick," he said. "A story made by cowards." But the next night, the village learned the truth. Prince Jengo walked again. He moved through the streets, knocking on doors. The first night, 2 families were found dead by morning. Their bodies were cold, their eyes open, their faces twisted in terror. The second night, no one dared to leave their home after dark. We locked our doors. We prayed. But we still heard it, the slow, dragging footsteps. The creaking of his neck turning. The gentle knock on a wooden door. By the third night, we had lost too many people. We had to do something. I remembered the old woman's words. "You will rise, but you will not belong to the living." At dawn, we dug up Prince Jengo's grave. The coffin was empty. Prince Jengo was still out there. And by then, he was not alone. After that terrible night, we understood, evil does not die so easily. Prince Jengo came back because his soul found no peace. He was too cruel, too greedy, too soaked in the suffering of others. Death took his body, but it could not take his sins. People always think they can do whatever they want, that power gives them the right to crush the weak. But the earth remembers. The sky sees. And when the time for reckoning comes, neither money, nor strength, nor royal blood will save them. We left the village. Those who stayed disappeared. No one ever saw Prince Jengo again. But sometimes, when the night is dark, when the wind carries the scent of damp earth and rotting wood, I hear it again. Slow, heavy footsteps. And a quiet, almost polite knock on the door.